Okay, hi everybody. This is my first Loom video. Maybe some of you are familiar with it. I'm not really familiar with it, so we're going to give it a shot. And I know several of you are getting tired of typing out notes, so we'll do this instead. All right, so the triumvirate is a government that was the first government really to kind of take over after the Republic. So that would be, the first group would be Crassus, Pompey, and Julius Caesar. They all held enormous military and political power. Crassus was the richest man in Rome, whereas Pompey was a war hero, and Caesar had military command in Spain. Now, in 60 BC, Caesar joined up with Crassus and Pompey to form this first triumvirate. And a triumvirate is a government by three people with equal power. So who formed the first triumvirate? Was it A, Crassus, B, Pompey, C, Julius Caesar, or D, all of the above? Okay, so the first triumvirate, more about these three men. The wealth and power of these three men was enormous and enables them to dominate the political scene. With this power, they were able to achieve their basic aims. Pompey received a command in Spain. Crassus was given a command in Syria, and Caesar was granted a special military command in Gaul, so which is modern-day France. Once Crassus was killed, only two powerful men were left, which is really what kicked off another civil war. Okay, so at that time, Caesar makes a decision to cross the Rubicon and come after Pompey, who goes on the run. And basically, he is given, he takes over Italy and hunts down Pompey. So, anyway, as military leader, Caesar's always been willing to face great personal danger. And after this, he had veteran soldiers who were loyal to him, who didn't mind going after Pompey. So, Caesar did not like being near danger, true or false. Okay, so once Caesar has gotten rid of his last real opponent, the Senate becomes really afraid of Caesar's popularity, and they vote for Caesar to lay down his command and become a private citizen of Rome. Now, Caesar has seen what Sulla did. He knows that if he can come back into Italy and is unopposed, he's pretty much going to force the Senate not to, give up his command. So Caesar was totally against this because it would leave him vulnerable to his enemies. Caesar kept his army and moved into Italy illegally against the Senate's will. Caesar ended up starting a civil war between his forces and those of Pompey and his allies. So in that civil war, Caesar does defeat Pompey and was left in complete control of the Roman government. So, unlike Sulla, who ends up giving up his command to the Senate, what Caesar does is he gets himself appointed dictator for life. So how did the Senate try and get rid of Caesar? Well, you're going to have to read the bullet points and figure that out. Okay, so what ends up happening, of course, is that Caesar basically forces the Senate to make him dictator for life. So Caesar's made dictator in 47 BC. This position was really temporary, but only used in emergencies. So what the Senate would do is they would appoint a temporary dictator in times of war. That dictator was one man that would have sole authority to fight wars. In that way, the senates and Congress, as we know from our American government, a lot of times it's hard for them to pass laws. There's a lot of internal fighting. By passing temporary power to one man, that man is able to bypass all decision making and has the authority to wage war. Now, after they do that, after that's done, that man is supposed to voluntarily give up power. Okay, so again, this position was temporary and only used for emergencies. But Caesar was officially made dictator for life in 44 BC. He gave land to the poor and increased the Senate to 900 members. So by doing so, he made the Senate so large and so unruly, really it weakens the Senate. I mean, we have a hard enough time passing laws with 100 senators. Imagine what's going to happen if there's 900 senators. So by expanding the number of senators, he weakened the Senate's power. Okay, so what is a dictator? That is an absolute ruler. When did Caesar expand the number of senators, and what happened? So A, he increased the Senate to 900 members. B, he gave land to the poor. C, he weakened the Senate's power. And D, he was made dictator. Okay, so Caesar's accomplishments. Caesar granted citizenship to a number of people in the provinces who had helped him. He also changed the calendar by introducing the Egyptian solar calendar of 365 days, which, with few more changes, became our current calendar in 1582. So we use the Caesarian calendar, and that's why we have names like July for Julius and August for Augustus. Okay, Caesar had many more plans along the lines of building projects and war campaigns, but was never able to carry it out. In 44 BC, and that's because, of course, in 44 BC, Caesar was assassinated by a group of lead senators who resented him and feared that the old republic system would never return under Caesar. So he comes to a famous Senate meeting. Many of these senators were friends of his that he had known all his life. In fact, one very famous senator was Brutus, and as he's coming up the steps to the Senate, suddenly the senators draw their short swords and begin stabbing him repeatedly. Supposedly, the last words out of Caesar's mouth are "et tu, Brute," which means "you too, Brutus." And Brutus is one of the guys who ends up stabbing him in the back. And so that was one of his best friends. Basically, what ends up happening is that kicks off another series of civil wars in which Caesar's adopted son, Octavian, ultimately takes over and crowns himself the first actual emperor of Rome. Okay, so the second triumvirate. We'll shout out here to Andrew Ball, who made this slide. The second triumvirate was composed of two of Caesar's right-hand men. So Caesar was wildly popular amongst his soldiers. He was wildly popular amongst the poor because the poor really felt like he was putting the patricians in their place. And Caesar had a very large following. After Julius Caesar died, Octavian, Antony, and Lepidus formed the second triumvirate. After a few years, Antony and Octavian split the Roman area between them, backstabbing Lepidus, and eventually Octavian takes the west and Antony takes the east. Now, in addition to the fact that Antony takes the east, which is really That really would have been Alexander the Great's empire. He also marries Julius Caesar's widowed wife, none other than Cleopatra. So Cleopatra manages to convince Antony that they can take on Octavian and they can attack the West, forming a massive empire from Egypt all the way to Spain. So, who took control after Julius Caesar died? Would it be Octavian, Antony, both A and B, or both C, A, but not B? Okay, the Roman Empire was too small for two masters. Octavian and Antony soon came into a conflict. Antony, as I said before, allied himself with the Egyptian queen Cleopatra VII, whom he fell deeply in love with, just as Caesar did before him. The Battle of Actium in Greece in 31 BC, Octavian's forces smashed the army and the navy of Antony and Cleopatra. Both fled to Egypt, where they committed suicide a year later. So who did Caesar and Antony fall in love with? That's a good question. With his final enemy defeated, Octavian, the adopted son of Julius Caesar, at the age of 32, stood supreme over the Roman world. The civil wars had ended, as well as the Republic, and Augustus crowns himself the first emperor of Rome. So really, was Julius Caesar the first emperor of Rome? No, Julius Caesar ends the Roman Republic. He is a dictator for life. However, he never crowns himself emperor. That is Augustus Caesar. So, the period beginning from 31 BC and lasting until AD 14 experienced the foundations of the Roman Empire and was just the beginning of Octavian's rule. So, how old was Octavian when he ruled Rome? What led to the beginning of the Roman Empire? Well, Octavian proclaimed the restoration of the Republic. That was all a lie. At the same time, he knew the Republic could not be restored. So Octavian still gave some power to the Senate. He still became the first Roman emperor, and much like his predecessors, what he did was he made a much larger Senate. It was much weaker, and basically all they did was rubber stamp whatever Octavian asked them to rubber stamp. So Octavian made all the decisions. All they did was vote to agree with Octavian, and they all agreed with Octavian. If they didn't, Octavian would have them killed. So, what did Octavian proclaim? A, restoration of the Republic. B, the end of the empire. Or C, to keep the empire standing. Okay, the restoration of the Republic. So again, in 27 BC, Octavian proclaimed the restoration of the Republic. Only traditional Republican forms would make the Senate happy, and Octavian became the first Roman emperor. So, true or false? Was Octavian the first Roman emperor? Octavian, Augustus Caesar. In 27 BC, the Senate rewarded Octavian the title of Augustus, which means the revered one, or the most august. Augustus proved to be highly popular. No doubt people were glad the civil wars had ended. He continued control of the army and was the chief source, which was the chief source of Augustus's power. And the Senate gave Augustus the title Imperator. Imperator means commander-in-chief. And that is eventually where we get the English word for emperor. Okay, true or false? The chief source of Augustus's power was his continuing control of the army. And there it is, highlighted, the answer. Whoa, somebody got fancy with that slide. It was pretty cool. I approve of that. Okay, Augustus began a new system of governing provinces. And so Augustus ruled senatorial governors and established unity in imperial policy. And so maybe this slide should probably be titled something like the government under Augustus Caesar. So who began a new system of government? I'll let you make that decision. And there's a statue bust of Augustus. There he is, pointing up. Look at the little baby on his knee there. That is symbolic. I forget what it symbolizes, though. I think it's the same symbol that we use for Valentine's Day, which would be Cupid, who was worked for the goddess of love, otherwise known as Venus. Okay, Augustus's limited power. Augustus stabilized the frontiers of the Roman Empire. Augustus conquered the central and maritime Alps and expanded Roman control of the Balkan Peninsula. His attempt to conquer Germany failed, and this failure showed him that Rome's power was not unlimited. So true or false? Augustus conquered Germany with ease. All right, now, right here towards the end, let me flip back a page here. Right here towards the end, Augustus is looking for as many ways to stabilize the government as possible. So one of the big solutions for him to stabilize the government was religion. And so this slide is titled... Okay, so this title again is called Religious Cults. Augustus was worried about the religious health of the Roman state. He believed civil wars weakened the strength of their religion. And so religion was considered a pillar of a strong state. So he felt like if the citizens of the Rome were religious and they were dedicated to the Roman gods, Rome would be a stronger empire. So he built and fixed many temples. These temples were dedicated to Roman gods. He supported the idea of a religious cult devoted to the emperor and claimed, like Alexander and other kings of the Eastern world, to be the son of a god. After his death, he was stated to be a god. So what weakened the strengths of the Roman religion? And that is up for you to decide. Okay, now this all becomes known as the Augustinian Age, and it really kicks off the age of what we consider Pax Romana, which we'll talk about. The Augustinian Age was a lengthy one. Augustus died in AD 14 after controlling the Roman world for 45 years. So remember, he takes control at 32. And so he dies sometime around the age of 77. He created a new order while maintaining traditions and values, perhaps fitting for a leader whose favorite phrase was, "Make haste slowly." By the time of his death, the Republic was a memory. Rome would now be ruled by emperors from this point on. So, what was Augustus's favorite quote? And that is the end of our slideshow.